Welcome back, y'all. Today I've got the machine learning algorithms predictions for UFC Fight Night Vettori versus Dolidze 2. Before we get into that, let's have a quick look at how we did last weekend. There was a one championship card this past weekend, but there wasn't enough data on any of the fights in order to make predictions, so that's not included here on the graph. We also had UFC 313. We ended up losing just less than half a unit there, but putting that free play on Yasmin Lucindo was a bit of a mistake on my part. There is some good news though. We did get our monthly bonus before UFC 313, but unfortunately after we had made predictions. On top of that, I was also sent a birthday bonus after UFC 313. So all in all, we ended up positive over the last week. With that out of the way, let's jump into this weekend's card. We'll be kicking this one off with a women's bantamweight bout between Priscilla Cachoeira and Josiane Nunes. Both of these women are coming off of 2 losses. Priscilla is both coming by way of submission. Josiane is both coming by way of decision. Priscilla will be 5 years older. She'll have a pretty significant advantage in height, but is still giving up a couple inches in reach. After those recent losses, Priscilla's taken 420 days away, and Josiane's not making a quick turnaround either, but she is coming back in about half the time at only 203 days. At the books, Nunes is a moderate minus 190 favorite. V1 is in line with that, but we are betting V2 right now, which leans very heavily in Priscilla's direction. We'll be putting 1 unit on Priscilla in this fight. Next up is a flyweight bout between Andre Lima and Daniel Bairez. Andre is still undefeated at 10-0, 3 of those in the UFC. His first of which was stopped because his opponent bit him. He'll also be the younger fighter by 10 years. On top of that, he's got a height and a reach advantage, both of those being pretty small but still existent. At the books, he's a minus 275 favorite. Both V1 and V2 are right in line with that. They're each placing him at about 70% chance of victory. We'll be taking Andre Lima in this bout for enough to return 1.5 units. Staying in the lighter weight classes, we've got a bantamweight bout between Josias Musasa and Carlos Vera. Musasa is an undefeated fighter making his UFC debut. In his first 7 victories, all of them came by KO TKO, 6 of those coming in the first round. His most recent victory was a split decision on the Contender Series about 6 months ago. Again, we see another very large age gap, this time 11 years, and just like in the last fight, the younger fighter will have both a small height and reach advantage. The book odds on this one are very wide, with Musasas coming in at minus 650. Both V1 and V2 lean very, very heavily Josias' way, so despite how expensive it's going to be, we will be wagering enough to return 1.5 units. Moving up to 205, we have Brenson Ribeiro taking on another undefeated newcomer in Dr. Nergoze. It feels like Brenson's the much more experienced fighter here, but he's only got 3 fights in the UFC, going 1-2, and he's only been in the promotion for just over a year. Height between these two is essentially the same, but DR will be giving up 7 inches in reach. Despite this, he's still a minus 310 at the books. V1 leans very slightly to Ribeiro here, while V2 is more confident in DR. We're going to follow V2 here, as we always do. We'll be placing enough to return 1 unit on Nergoze. We've got one more women's fight on the card, this one between Sam Hughes and Stephanie Luciano at strawweight. Hughes is the older and more experienced fighter in this matchup, but they did both go pro in 2019. Luciano has just been far less active over that time period. She will have 1 inch in height and a couple inches of reach advantage, and for that she'll be a minus 255 favorite at the books. Neither of the models are extremely confident on this pick, but they both do agree on Luciano, so we'll be betting enough here to return 1.5 units with a win. Closing out the prelims is a heavyweight matchup between Ryan Spann and Waldo Cortez Acosta. Can anybody tell me if this move is permanent for Ryan Spann or if he plans on moving back down to light heavyweight? He will have a very small height and reach advantage in this one. 1 inch on each is probably negligible here. Waldo's had a bit longer of a layoff coming into this bout, and his record shows that he pulled out of a bout in October due to an injury. Regardless, the books have him as a -170 favorite. V1 disagrees here, but V2 is right in line. This is a little surprising to me because the model generally loves heavyweights with submissions. I just don't think it likes the fact that Ryan Spann has never fought at heavyweight before. We'll be taking Waldo Cortez Acosta here for 1.7 units. We'll be spending most of the main card down at the lighter weights, kicking it off with AJ Cunningham taking on Su Young Yu at featherweight. These two are very close in age. Both seem very well-rounded by their records, but AJ will have a significant height and reach advantage coming into this fight. Unfortunately, he has been finished in 2 of his last 3 outings, while Yu is coming off of 3 straight victories. This will only be the second fight in the UFC for each of them, so it's still pretty early as far as high-level experience goes. At the books, Yu is a massive -700 favorite. V1 and V2 both agree, but not nearly to the level of -700. This doesn't really matter though, both versions of the model agree. We'll be putting a massive amount on this fight, enough to return 1.5 units with a win. The matchmakers built this card like another old versus young season of The Ultimate Fighter. This one with a 7-year age gap between Damon Blackshear and Cody Gibson at bantamweight. Cody's age does bring a lot more experience overall, but he does only have 8 fights in the UFC to Damon's 7. So there isn't a large gap in high-level experience. Height and reach are nearly identical for these two, and their last outing was only separated by a week. Damon Blackshear is a pretty heavy -500 favorite at the books. Both versions of the model are leaning his direction, but definitely not -500 heavy. Regardless, I'm betting what the model tells us, so we'll be putting 7.5 units on Damon Blackshear in this fight. Moving up to lightweight, we'll see Kurt Holobaugh take on Alexander Hernandez. Kurt is 6 years older and has 6 additional pro wins to go with it, but that doesn't seem to be enough. The odds makers have him as a +155 underdog, and both versions of the model are leaning quite substantially to Hernandez. We will be taking Hernandez at a -180 here to return 1.5 units. And again, with massive age gaps, this time Sang-Woo Choi will be 9 years older than his opponent, Kevin Vallejos. Kevin will be making his UFC debut on a 3-fight win streak, with his only loss coming on the Contender Series against John Silva. Choi, on the other hand, has lost 4 of his last 5, 3 of those coming by stoppage. At the books, Kevin is a very heavy -600 favorite. V1 and V2 lean very heavily his direction. We'll be putting 9 units on this fight to return 1.5 with a win. The co-main event on this card is an exciting welterweight matchup between Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos and Chidi Njokuani. Zaleski is a couple years older in this fight, but the more important stuff to look at is him giving up 4 inches in height along with 7 inches in reach. Despite that, at the books, he is still a -175 favorite. V1 likes him to win by a very little bit, but V2 is leaning towards Chidi Njokuani here. We're still betting V2, so we're going to take Chidi here for 1 unit as the underdog. Closing out the night will be a middleweight rematch between Roman Dolidze and Marvin Vettori. The first bout took place almost exactly 2 years ago. In that one, Vettori took home the victory by unanimous decision. And he's only had a single fight since then where he lost a decision to Jared Cannonier. In that same time period, Dolidze's taken 3 fights. He lost his first one, but has since gone on a 2-fight win streak. I've heard the stat that if the younger fighter wins the first bout, they're increasingly likely to win a rematch. And everyone here agrees except for V2. I'm not sure why the disagreement here, but it sees good value on Dolidze as a plus 120 underdog. So we'll be closing the night with 1 unit risked on Dolidze. That's all the predictions I've got for you this week. So let's have a look at the totals. We were able to make 12 wagers out of the 13 fights. The first fight of the night just didn't have enough data for us. 9 of those wagers came on favorites, some of them pretty big favorites. 3 on underdogs. We had 7 confident picks. All of those were on favorites. None of our underdog picks this week are with confidence. Our total risk came out to just over 55% of our bankroll, with a potential win coming up just shy of 72 units. Because of all the favorites, this only leaves us with 16.8 units of potential profit, which is about 30.5% ROI. That's all I've got for you this week. Let me know why your predictions are better in the comments below, and good luck on all your bets this weekend.